What happens when a power-hungry cop meets a woman who surpasses him in every meaningful way? It all began late on a quiet Wednesday night in Toledo, Ohio, past 11 p.m., at that hour when the streets are almost deserted, except for a few workers. Heading home, and one woman, Lieutenant Colonel Adrian Wallas, driving through the city after a long meeting at a military base 2 hours south. She was behind the wheel of a government-issued black SUV, nothing flashy. Clean, simple, discreet, just like her. She had been driving for a while, quietly humming along with the sound of the tires on the road, her mind already halfway home. She wasn't speeding, swerving, or doing anything wrong, but Sergeant Daniel Mercer saw it differently. He was parked near Reynolds Road, sipping lukewarm coffee and scrolling through his phone in boredom. His shift had been uneventful. No calls, no excitement. Then an unfamiliar car passed by. He tossed his cup aside, flipped on the siren, and pulled out. Before Adrian even realized what was happening, the cruiser was behind her. She slowed down and pulled over, calm and composed, just like her training had taught her. The patrol door slammed shut. In the rearview mirror, she saw a tall man walking toward her, hand on his holster and flashlight in the other. He didn't go to the passenger side. He went straight to her window. "License and registration," he said without a greeting. Adrian kept her hands where he could see them and lowered the window halfway. "Officer, may I ask why I was stopped?" Mercer shined the flashlight in her face. "You were drifting lanes. Didn't signal. Looked like you might have been drinking." She raised an eyebrow. "I wasn't." "License and registration," he repeated, louder. Adrian didn't argue. She moved slowly, retrieved the documents from the glove compartment, and handed them over. "This is a government vehicle. I'm a federal employee," she added. Mercer glanced at the ID. "Military, huh?" he smirked. "Doesn't mean you're above the law." "I never said I was," she replied. His voice turned sharper. "Step out of the vehicle." Adrian blinked. "Excuse me?" "Step out. I'm giving you a sobriety test." Her jaw tightened, but she stayed calm. "On what grounds?" "I've cooperated. I haven't been drinking. I'd like to know the reason." Mercer stepped closer. "You're refusing a lawful order now?" Adrian didn't flinch. "I'm asking for an explanation." He didn't. Like that. He yanked the door open. "Out! Now!" That's when she quietly turned on her phone's camera and hit record. "Just to be clear," she said, "this conversation is being recorded." Mercer's eyes flicked to the phone. For the first time, a flicker of hesitation crossed his face. But he didn't back down. "Out! Now!" Adrian stepped out, not aggressive but firm. She didn't shout or resist, but her confidence was evident, even in civilian clothes. Mercer looked at her fully for the first time. A little voice in his head whispered, "Who am I dealing with here?" But pride was louder. He made her walk a straight line under the streetlights, like a drunk driver on a weekend night. She passed the test flawlessly. No slurs, no stumbles, no hesitation. Still, he wrote a ticket. Failure to maintain lane. Adrian took the paper without a word, just a look. Then she got back in her car and drove off. But Mercer had no idea the ticket would end up in court and change everything. Mercer wasn't new to the job. 15 years on the force had hardened him. He'd handled everything, street fights, car wrecks, and built a reputation that made rookies straighten up when he entered the room, and he liked it that way. He didn't ask questions. He gave orders. To him, the badge meant control, the final word. It didn't matter if it was a smart-mouthed teenager or a driver who asked too many questions. Mercer never backed down and never apologized. People in his district knew him as a cop who did his paperwork, showed up on time, and never hesitated. But they also knew he had a sharp tongue and a quick temper. No one challenged him until that night. Back at the station, he barely mentioned the stop, logged the ticket, failure to maintain lane, possible impairment, no arrest, and docked his body cam. As usual, the footage would sit for 2 days. Meanwhile, he joked about it in the break room. Lady tried flashing her government ID at you. Me like I'd be scared, he told Officer Diaz. She said her name was Wallas. Adrian Wallas. Diaz's face changed. Lieutenant Colonel Wallas? She gave a talk at the academy last year. She's no joke. Bronze Star, 2 tours, handles logistics for Fort Wayne. She's the real deal. Mercer shrugged it off. Don't care who she is. On the road, I'm the law. But that hint of respect in Diaz's voice stuck with him. Still, Mercer didn't review the footage or give the citation a second thought. As far as he was concerned, it was over. But it wasn't. Adrian wasn't one for drama. She wasn't confrontational. After 22 years in uniform, 2 deployments, and countless dangerous situations, she had no time for petty battles. But this was different. She wasn't just thinking about herself. She was thinking about every young soldier she mentored, every civilian she saw mistreated, every woman, especially every black woman, who kept silent just to avoid trouble. She wasn't going to be silent. The next morning, she sat in her Fort Wayne office, staring at the screen. She hadn't slept much, not from anger, though she was angry, but from replaying the stop in her head. The way he spoke to her, the way his hand hovered near his gun, the way he tried to provoke her. She knew how badly that could have gone if she'd lost her temper. Her aide, Sergeant Daniels, knocked. "You okay, Colonel?" She looked up. "No, but I'm handling it." He stepped in and shut the door. "I saw the video. Want me to call base legal?" "Already did," she said. Daniels hesitated. "You sure you want to go public with this?" Adrian leaned back. "I'm not looking for drama. I'm looking for accountability." And she meant it. She'd spent her career leading with discipline and integrity. Her rank wasn't just a title. She'd earned it. She'd led convoys in war zones, coordinated disaster relief, managed troops and supplies on 4 continents. But none of that mattered to Mercer. To him, she was just another driver who didn't obey fast enough. And that's what bothered her most. How easy it had been for him. So she made the calls. Military lawyers, the Inspector General. She attached the video, filed the complaint, and let the facts speak. By week's end, Mercer's name was linked to an internal investigation. Department attorneys were notified. Adrian kept working quietly, but behind the scenes, she was ready. Her lawyer said the stop wasn't just rude. It might have broken federal rules. And if it came to trial, they'd go all the way. Adrian didn't flinch. She was ready. Mercer thought it would all blow over until the envelope arrived. Thin, manila, her name typed on the front. He tore it open in the parking lot expecting another memo. It wasn't. It was a court summons. Civil rights violation. Plaintiff, Lieutenant Colonel Adrian Wallas. Charges: illegal stop, intimidation, abuse of power. He stood there, staring at the paper. Then he walked off, laughing. "No way," he muttered. "No way this sticks." But back at the station, the mood had changed. His boss, Officer Riding, called him in. The door shut. The blinds were drawn. "Dan," Riding began, "we need to talk." Mercer folded his arms. "What about? That lady's just playing victim." Riding didn't smile. "She's not playing. Do you even know who she is?" "Don't care who she is. She was rude, and now she's mad I didn't treat her like royalty. Dan, she's not just anybody. She's a high-ranking officer, war vet, clean record, powerful friends, and she recorded the whole thing, from her side and yours. Mercer shrugged. So what? We just roll over because she outranks us. No, but we can't pretend this is nothing. You're going to court, and when it breaks, it's going to blow up. Still, Mercer was stubborn. She wasn't even arrested. I didn't touch her. I followed protocol. You were tense, Dan. You escalated. You treated her like a suspect before you knew anything. Mercer clamped his jaw. For once, no quick comeback. The court date was set 3 weeks out. By then, whispers spread around the department. Quiet conversations in the locker room. Sideways looks in the hall. No one said anything to his face, but Mercer felt the shift. He wasn't the tough guy anymore. Now, he was the liability. At Fort Wayne, Adrian prepared differently. No press. No pleas. She met privately with her lawyers, watched the footage again and again, wrote down every detail. Calm, collected, resolute. Her lawyer, Delaney Price, sat across from her. You sure about trial? It's public. It'll follow you. Adrian nodded. So be it. Price hesitated. Most people would let it go. I've let too much go, Adrian said. This isn't just about me. She didn't want money. She wanted proof, on record, that power didn't mean you could do what you wanted. Silence wasn't the only option. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for everyone who'd ever been disrespected, dismissed, or stepped on by someone hiding behind authority. When court day came, she didn't sneak in. She walked in wearing full dress uniform, badges, medals, rank on full display. She wanted the jury to see her, not as a woman in a car, but as someone who had served, followed the rules, and expected justice. The cold rain immediately soaked through his jacket, and water dripped down his face. He raised his hands slightly to show they were empty. The wet ground squished under his boots as he stood. Haskins motioned with the flashlight. Move to the front of your vehicle. Adrian complied, walking slowly to the front bumper of his car, away from the relative shelter of the open door. His breath misted in the cool air as the rain pelted his shoulders. The woods on either side of the road were dark and silent, the only light coming from the spinning police lights and headlights. This stretch of highway was deserted. There would be no witnesses. The thought was not comforting. Even so, Adrian remained calm outwardly. Inwardly, he braced himself. Haskins approached him, one hand on his duty belt. Hands on the hood, he ordered. I'm going to conduct a search. A search? Adrian knew this was completely unjustified. The sergeant hadn't even attempted a proper reason beyond the invented stop sign. Now he was treating him like a criminal. Perhaps Haskins hoped to find something, anything, to justify arresting him. Or maybe this was purely about humiliation and intimidation. Adrian took a deep, slow breath as he leaned forward to place his hands on the wet hood of his car. The latest engine was cool now, but the metal was slick with rainwater. This isn't necessary, Sergeant, Adrian said, trying one more time to inject reason. I've been cooperative. I'm unarmed. I just want to be on my way. Haskins ignored his words. Roughly, he kicked Adrian's feet further apart. Spread your legs, he barked. Adrian felt a flare of anger at the unnecessary manhandling, but did as instructed, widening his stance. The sergeant's hands patted him down brusquely, slapping at his pockets and along his sides. Finding nothing but Adrian's wallet and a set of car keys, Haskins seemed to grow more irritated. He tossed the wallet aside onto the hood carelessly. "No weapons, huh? That's supposed to make you a saint?" he muttered, as if disappointed. He then tried the next tactic. "You been drinking tonight, Mr. Wallas? You smell like alcohol." Adrian's eyes widened in disbelief at the blatant lie. He hadn't had a drop of alcohol. At the diner, he'd only had coffee. The accusation was so transparently false, it almost stunned him. Was Haskins planning to fabricate a DUI? "Sergeant, I have not been drinking," Adrian answered firmly. "You're welcome to administer a breathalyzer." "Oh, I will," Haskins said with a malicious grin. "Right after we're done here." He finished patting down Adrian's legs and then stood up straight. "Turn around," he commanded. Adrian slowly turned to face him, rain dripping from his hair into his eyes. Haskins was not finished. "Stand right there and don't move," he said. Then he began to walk back toward Adrian's car. Adrian watched as the sergeant unholstered his flashlight again and leaned into the driver's side, which Adrian had left open. The officer rummaged around the front seat area. Adrian felt a twist of anxiety. Leaving him alone in the back by the car while the officer searched unaccompanied was a classic setup for planting evidence. Adrian knew he had nothing illegal, but that wouldn't stop someone like Haskins if he was determined to cause harm. "Officer," Adrian called out over the wind and rain, "I do not consent to a search of my vehicle." His voice was loud to be heard over the storm, but he kept the tone controlled. Haskins ignored him entirely. He continued rooting through the glove compartment and the console. Adrian clenched his jaw. This was a blatant violation of his rights. Haskins hadn't asked permission, nor did he have a warrant or probable cause. Adrian considered that any further protest might provoke the sergeant into something even more drastic. After a minute, Haskins returned, apparently finding nothing incriminating. His face was a mask of annoyance. To Adrian's surprise, in the sergeant's hand was the half-finished container of chicken fried steak and potatoes Adrian had gotten to go from the diner. He hadn't wanted to waste what he hadn't eaten and planned to finish it later. Haskins held it up. Rain dripped off the styrofoam container. "What do we have here?" he taunted. "Stolen property? What did you steal from the diner?" Adrian blinked rain out of his eyes. "It's my leftover dinner," he said slowly, disbelief creeping into his voice at how far the sergeant was stretching. "Leftover dinner," Haskins repeated mockingly, tossing the container to the ground. It burst open, and the remaining food spilled into the mud. "Oops," he smirked. "Littering on the roadside, are we? That's another violation." A surge of anger welled up in Adrian. He took one step forward, unable to stop himself. "That was completely unnecessary," he said in a stern voice. The sergeant's eyes gleamed. In a flash, he stepped forward and jabbed a finger into Adrian's chest. "Back off," he snarled. "You do not step toward an officer like that. Are you threatening me?" His other hand hovered near his gun. Adrian immediately raised his hand slightly in a placating gesture. "I am not threatening you, Sergeant," he said evenly. His chest where the man had jabbed him ached dully. "But you had no cause to do that. I haven't broken any laws." "You're obstructing justice right now," Haskins hissed, "interfering with a police investigation." He was close enough that Adrian could see the rain droplets clinging to the brim of the sergeant's hat and the wild look in his eyes. The man was fishing for a reason, any reason, to escalate this. Despite the anger churning in his gut, Adrian's years of training kept his voice measured. "Sergeant, I am complying with your commands. I have given you my ID, stepped out of my car, allowed a pat-down. I do not understand why you are treating me like a criminal." Haskins sneered. Maybe because I know your type, he spat. Big shot know-it-alls who think being military means you can do whatever you want. Well, not in my town. Here, you follow my orders. Adrian met his gaze unflinchingly. Thunder rumbled in the distance. I have always respected lawful authority, he replied, raising his voice just enough to be heard over the rain. I also know the law. I know my rights. That was the wrong thing to say. Haskins's face contorted with rage. Your rights? He echoed furiously. How about the right to remain silent? Because I can arrange that. Before Adrian could respond, Haskins suddenly reached for his wrist. In one swift motion, he twisted Adrian around and slammed him face first onto the hood of the car. The breath whooshed out of Adrian's lungs as his torso hit the metal hard, his cheek pressed against the cold, wet surface. Pain shot through his hip and ribs where they impacted the edge of the hood. Adrian grimaced, instinctively moving his hands to push himself off the car, but Haskins shoved him down more firmly, yanking one arm behind his back. You're under arrest, the sergeant growled into his ear over the pounding rain. Adrian's mind raced. Arrest? On what grounds? On what charge? He shouted over his shoulder, thunder booming as if to punctuate his words. Haskins snapped a handcuff onto Adrian's right wrist, the metal biting into skin. Assaulting. An officer, he barked. What? I did not assault you. Adrian protested, incredulous. He had done no such thing. The sergeant grabbed his other arm, wrenching it back. Adrian did not resist, but the roughness made his shoulder flare with pain. With a harsh click, the second cuff locked around his left wrist. You stepped toward me in a threatening manner, Haskins said, his voice a triumphant snarl. That's assault. That's not true, and you know it, Adrian replied, his voice strained as he tried to control the pain radiating from his ribs where he'd been slammed. Rainwater pooled under his cheek on the hood, chilling his skin. Haskins yanked Adrian, upright by the handcuffs, not responding to the objection. And I'm sure I'll think of a few more charges by the time we get to the station, he added viciously. Resisting arrest, reckless driving, hell, maybe even DUI. I smell that alcohol on you, remember? Adrian's blood ran cold at how blatantly the sergeant was fabricating things. This was beyond a personal vendetta. Haskins was prepared to abuse his power to teach Adrian some twisted lesson. But as infuriating and frightening as it was, Adrian forced himself to stay calm. He was not going to give Haskins the satisfaction of seeing him panic. You're making a mistake, Sergeant, Adrian said firmly, as Haskins began frog-marching him toward the police cruiser. The cuffs pinched tightly around his wrists. I haven't done anything wrong. Shut up, Haskins snapped, shoving him forward. You can tell it to the judge. The prospect, at least, gave Adrian a glimmer of hope. Yes, he would tell it to the judge. He would make sure every bit of this injustice was brought to light. As he was pushed into the back seat of the patrol car, the thought solidified in his mind. He would not let Sergeant Haskins get away with this abuse of power.